It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, to share their testimony, to inspire hope, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. It is time to wake up the lions. And I have an absolute lion with me here today, folks. Has written an amazing book. Please welcome James Brown, author of Three Proofs of God, talking about Daniel 9:25. I'm really intrigued to hear what we have to say about this. James, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Rory. It's good to be here, and it's good to be with your listeners.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to dive into the book, but I'm going to have to hold myself back for a minute. So tell everybody a little bit about James Brown, who you are, and kind of what led you to this point. How has God influenced your life?
I think the most important thing is to talk about the message that we're bringing,
Hmm?
and that is there is hard evidence that God exists, that Scripture is reliable, and that Jesus is the Messiah. We can take that not merely on faith, but we have hard evidence, verifiable evidence to back that up. And the book, Three Proofs of God, does present that some evidence, some of that. I'm not claiming that it's the only one, but it is certainly among the most powerful and the most precise.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm excited about, is to share this this proof of God that God left for us in his word, that we can know that he is God.
Love that. Love that. Okay. What brought you to focusing on Daniel 9:25?
Well, I have kind of a normal upbringing. I was born into a church going home. We weren't terribly deep in the word, but and then when I went to college, I took a technical degree. I'm a chemist. And I hung around a lot of scientific minded people who, you had to show them, you had to bring the evidence, and you had to discuss the evidence and weigh it in order to accept anything as a fact. And I've taken that approach and applied it to this verse in the Bible, which is unique in several ways. And I'm happy to go into that. But anyway, I then later was looking for a church that for my daughter, one that was similar to mine, that had a good youth group, because that was very important to me. And I came across one. I came across an excellent, excellent Bible study, and one that delved into this verse 925 and presented a solution that dated back about 150 years from a guy named Robert Anderson. And in the presentation was that Daniel foretold the very precise day that Jesus would enter Jerusalem triumphantly in the event that we call Palm Sunday. And I listened to the presentation. It seemed very plausible at the time, but I wasn't quite convinced that everything about it was true yet. And one of the things was, if this is true, why doesn't everyone know about it? It's been out since 1881. Why doesn't everyone know about it? Because if this is true, this is game, set, and match. This is objective evidence of God's existence. Because we people, we humans, cannot tell the future. And as much as we would love to, we would love to know even the stock market tomorrow, or whether we're going to get sick or remain healthy, or who we're going to marry, or what's going to happen, who's going to win the Super Bowl. We would love to know that, but we can't. We cannot observe the future and know it in our present. And God claims to know the future. In Isaiah 46, 9 and 10, it said, "Remember the things long past, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is no one like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, things which have not been done, saying, my plan will be established and I will accomplish all my good pleasure." God tells us that he can. And in the book of Isaiah itself, he makes statements similar to that. I am God. I can tell you the future so that you know that I am God and not your idols made of wood and stone. So this is we are definitely following, we are definitely following a method that God prescribed for himself, is that he is foretelling the future and then the future happened. Now, the big question is, what did he foretell and did it come to pass? So that's what this book unpacks. What I found is that the Anderson solution, although its interpretation is very good, it made some mistakes in the calendar, calculation mistakes. Address those and list those. And so it didn't really take off at the time. And then in 1977, Dr. Harold Hoehner at Dallas Theological uh, took that same solution, corrected many of Anderson's mistakes, and presented his solution. And unfortunately, it also has an error in it that makes his dates impossible. And if you study it, and also the book lists that. It shows that. And I don't mean to be down on Anderson or Dr. Hoehner. They both did us a great service. They both brought us much closer to truth, and his work is very highly valued.
Sure.
But we have here a verse that that Jesus actually alerted us to. If you look in Matthew 24:15 in the Olivet Discourse, it says Jesus refers to the prophet Daniel. He uses Daniel by name. He calls him out by name, and talks about the abomination. It's when you see these things spoken of by the prophet Daniel, and then it includes this little phrase. It says, "Let the reader understand." Now, that's a very important bit of text. I mean, of course, all text in the Bible is important, but this is all not quite unique, but very rare in the Bible that a verse actually tells the reader to pay attention to it. There's something very important here. It happens only a half a dozen times, I think, mostly in the synoptics, including Matthew. And it's referring to the prophecy found in Daniel 9, called that we refer to as the 70 weeks prophecy. And when we turn to the 70 weeks prophecy, we see that same call out again. At the very beginning of Daniel 9:25, it says, "Therefore you are to know and understand." So again, it grabs us by the lapels and says, "Hey, understand this." And this isn't even at the beginning of the prophecy. This is in the middle. And the very next sentence is, "So you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with street and moat, even in times of distress." This has been recognized by the church for centuries as being highly, highly significant, despite the fact that at no point in the church history has there ever been any consensus on what precisely it means. We know it's important, but we just couldn't tell you how or why. But now we have a solution. We have a literal solution to this verse. And it's verifiable, and it's far more robust and in-depth than ever imagined before. And that is presented in my book, Three Proofs of God. So we're not only following Jesus's instructions to focus on this verse, but we are also following God's admonition to understand that only He and only He can see the future and describe it to us at any time. And this is hard evidence of God's existence.
Nice. Nice. When I first, sort of when I was reading through your bio, and then of course, you were gracious to send me the book, ebook. When I started looking into this and I read, of course, the passage in Daniel, and I went, okay, let's follow this, right? Just from a layman's standpoint who hasn't done anywhere near the research you've done, which is incredibly impressive, by the way, got to tell you. it immediately starts to lend itself to you have 7 weeks and then 62 weeks and then 70 weeks and so on, and you immediately start to go, well, there's a lot of pretext here to get to where does this begin, where does that begin, how do you clock this, and so on. How did you go about, I know you have more of a mathematical scientific type of background. How did you go about backing into that to figure out the conclusions you came up with?
Well, I saw the question as being extremely important. If
Mhm.
this is true, why doesn't everyone know about it? Because at the time, not everyone did know about it.
Right.
I'd say probably half the church is unaware of Daniel 9:25. And the and I didn't set out to prove it or disprove it. I set out to evaluate it. I saw that Anderson's solution could be was not viable. And I saw that Dr. Honer's solution was mathematically not viable,
Mm.
but I was not yet able to say that it was impossible. So I had to look at other possibilities. And what I found was very, very helpful was to key in on the precise wording that Daniel used. And you have to kind of back up to a 30,000-foot view here and look at this prophecy, which actually starts at the beginning of chapter 9, not just at 9:24, but the classic 70 weeks of Daniel are uh, chapter 9:24 through 9:27. And 9:24 is essentially a description of the kingdom of God, when it's a world that we have not yet achieved. It's a utopian world where there is no sin or iniquity, and 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 that it takes 70 weeks. It's the 70 weeks have been determined for your people and your holy city. They're speaking of the Hebrew people and Jerusalem.
Mm.
So our solution must exist within the scope of the Hebrew people and Jerusalem. Not Visigoths and not American politics. Or this is about Daniel's people and Jerusalem. And and then we have two verses that speak of events that were future to Daniel but are past to us. That is the advent of Messiah in 925, and then the crucifixion of Messiah and the destruction of Jerusalem in verse 926. It actually says that after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. Uh, and then the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. That's a clear reference
Mm.
to Jerusalem's destruction in the year 70 AD at the hands of Rome. And 40 years, or let's say 4 decades, although we know the exact date, 4 decades prior to that was Jesus's crucifixion. So Messiah had to come before the year 70 AD. So that's very interesting and very easy to
Mm.
grasp. Now, 925 is much more challenging. And then in verse 27, we have something that is, in my view, yet future. However, there are many Christians, many parts of the church who believe that it's not. They interpreted it very, very differently, diametrically opposed. But let's not get into future issues right now because the book does not deal with future issues. We deal with fulfilled prophecy, prophecy that we can verify that God, yes, this was fulfilled exactly as God foretold that it was fulfilled.
Mm.
So
Okay.
that's that's the 70 weeks in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, no kidding. Okay, all right. You've mentioned several times how important this passage is and this idea is here in
Yes.
925. Um, the in your opinion, why is it so incredibly important that this be done correctly and that this be told to people who are, in the faith?
because it shows that God's promises were kept, God's predictions, his foretelling was kept to a degree that far surpasses any previous uh, proposed solution to this. You will get solution. You see a lot of solutions that will link one decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem to one advent of Jesus or Messiah, and they'll plant the flag on that, and it's to the year, not to the day. That's typically what you see. Uh, this is far more in depth, precise, and robust than any of those. And there are, well, I could go off on a tangent on that, but you ask, why is it important? Because look at Daniel 9:24, the verse right before this one. He's speaking of a utopian world, the kingdom of God, where there is no sin, no iniquity. His promise will be kept far greater than human imagination. And that is important to know. That's important to bring home and to keep in your heart. I think I have to look it up, but it's in Hebrews. Let me see if I can pull it up. I think it's in Hebrews 1. Forgive me.
Not at all. Take your time. I love the story. So
No, I'm misremembering the number, but we are told that we should know that God exists. And a lot of people, they're not 100% on that. They might be 99%. But you
sure.
should be 100%. You can be 100%.
Hmm.
And I'm presenting hard evidence that
Right.
is knocked down. I want to say proof. Proof is this funny word. There's a big difference between proving something and convincing someone. I can bring all the proof in the world to a flat earther, but I'm unlikely to convince them. But I have proved the point that the earth is spherical.
Right.
Whether they are convinced or not, that's up to them. So it's and we deal with this. This is oh darn, I wish I could find that verse. Anyway,
It's all right.
so
Yeah, I
no,
understand.
I know it's in Hebrews somewhere.
All right. Um, have you had any pushback on this? Because whenever I've talked to several people who want to prove things about the Bible, and I
Sure,
love hearing the arguments that people have come up with. I don't need the proof, to be a believer. That's just me. But I love the proof that I hear.
yeah,
Stuff like this. I really
sure.
love digging into it. But I also have heard people who, for some reason, don't want to hear proof. And I don't really know why. I'm wondering if you've had some blowback on this resistance to
Sure.
accepting it.
It comes from the two opposite extremes. On one hand, you have people in the church who will say, I already know God exists. I already know the Bible's inerrant. I don't need anything to and some of them might even go so far as you shouldn't be looking at rational arguments for you should only be using faith.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I respect their approach. I completely respect that they come to God through faith alone. That's fine. That's good. I'm not saying they need a rational argument. But it also says in Isaiah, come and bring your strong evidence, state your case. In Isaiah, I think 41 or 42, somewhere in there. And the Bereans that Luke wrote about in Berea, a place where I was this last summer,
Oh,
they
neat.
examined the scriptures daily to see if these things were true. We are called, and that they were more noble minded than the Thessalonians, and the we are called to use our head, this wonderful organ, this mind that God created for us. I'm sure He's happy that we use it and use it to come closer to Him.
Right.
That's one area that we have pushback. There's the other area from the the atheist skeptic. Now I know a lot of atheists and skeptics. They don't all have hooves and horns. Some of them are very nice people, very pleasant to be around and such, and some are even friends. And but it's very difficult for them to take the Bible seriously in the beginning, even if they make a good faith effort to, because they didn't grow up. They're not sure. They see that it's written in a style that we don't write books in today. I mean, even if you get the most contemporary Bible translation, there's still something different about this book. And yes, there is something different about this book.
Mhm.
And they don't trust their own judgment reading it or accepting things as what is important, what is not important. And but usually they are expecting that you cannot prove God. That's what they're expecting. And so it's very, very difficult to break through those expectations because we humans tend to believe what we expect to believe or see what we expect to see, you know.
That's profound, but yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's interesting. I mean, you know, going in, you're going to get the blowback from the side that just doesn't believe, in the first place.
Right, right.
What always surprises me is the resistance of any sort of additional thinking. I don't even want to call it independent thought because, you're still in the faith. I mean, you're not questioning the faith. You're backing it
Oh,
up. You're proving
I'm
it.
backing it up. I'm bringing evidence for it that
Right.
was not apparent before.
Right. You're bringing support for the faith to people who may be doubting it. And
Correct.
yet, the people like that who are sort of in leadership seem to have such an insecure handle on where they are that they're threatened by everything. And any little source of this seems to really, and I hate to use the word, but trigger them a little bit.
Uh, It can be true. There
Yeah.
are churches, and especially in the legacy denominations, where the leadership is primarily more focused, or let's say, has an outsized focus on numbers, attendance, tithing, staffing, the building, those issues, and not on discipleship and bringing the gospel. You can go to a lot of churches, and I don't mean to pick on the legacy churches because they're
Well,
they're
not at
they're
all.
not alone in this. They're not alone in this. That where you can go, you could be there for weeks on end and never hear the gospel.
Right.
And there's something wrong with that. And among Gen Z right now, there is a movement back into the church. I see this. I work with Ratio Christi on that's a Christian apologetics organization
Mhm.
that on college campuses, and I work there at the chapter at Arizona State University, and I see a lot of kids. They come in, and I've seen a change in the acceptance or the willingness to consider the the scriptures, and it tends to be among males more than females. But these trends usually are led by the males. The females typically
Mhm.
will follow, and it tends to be toward the more traditional um, uh, parts of Christianity, the more doctrine denomination, not the legacy denominations, unless you're counting Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, and Reformed uh,
Hmm.
theological. But there is definitely a reawakening in that area.
I love that
So,
you're seeing that. Yeah. I absolutely love to hear that.
well, it's being picked up now in opinion polling. If you look at Barna,
Mhm.
the Barna Group, and some other polls, that they're picking up on this, and there could be many reasons driving this. I think it's too soon to say exactly what it is, but it does exist, and we have to pick up that we can't fail these kids. We've got to give them a place, a home in the church, and we have to bring the gospel to them, and we have to make them feel wanted and part of the church. And
Love
and
that.
that's going to be a huge challenge.
Yeah, I love that. Leaders like yourself, recognizing that makes my heart swell, to be honest with you. One of the things that got me into doing this podcast was watching my sons. They're 21 and 25 respectively, and they are some of the young lions of the church that you are talking
Mhm.
about right now. Brought their wives to it. They are so strong in it. It's amazing, and to see that movement with them and their friends, with their circles that they travel in. Um, I have noticed. I'd love to hear your opinion on this, if you don't mind, since we're talking about this. Um,
Sure.
I've noticed that the relationship seems different. I was raised Catholic, very traditional Catholic, and so on. And
Cradle Catholic.
pretty much, you got it. And our relationship was really never directly to God. Our relationship was to the church and
Mhm.
to the priest and to the institution. And we talked to them, and then they brought our message right to God and so on. And that really was how it worked. There seems to be a very different relationship now, especially with these young lions, where it's their individual relationship with Jesus Christ that really matters to them. And they're not going through a middleman anymore. I don't know if you've seen that where you are, or if you're seeing something different. I'd love to hear that.
I think that your intuition is generally correct. Now, many many young people are going back into the Catholic Church, whether they realize the legacy there or the history there, probably not. I mean, they're new.
Hmm.
That what defines a new believer. And I love me some Catholic brothers and sisters. I think that they're good Christians, but I am not in the Catholic Church. I'm a follower of Jesus. I don't follow a single denomination. I've worshiped with many different denominations in this country and in other countries as well. But just to get that part out of the way. But these kids, they're looking for a truth that is going to be true today and tomorrow and the rest of their lives. And they're inundated with social media and so many marketing messages every day. And what is true or trending or whatever this week is going to be old hat next week, and maybe even goofy or embarrassing the week after. And they're not wanting to build their lives on fads. That would be like eating a diet of popcorn for the rest of your life. You can't. You're going to be unhealthy, and they already know that they're unhealthy. They've coined this term, brain rot, to to describe what happens to your mind when you're doom scrolling through Instagram and TikTok, 12 hours a day.
Right.
They understand that. They understand it better than we do. Now, they're not getting off the Instagram. I too have a teenager. They're not they're not completely getting off of it, but they are at the same time seeking something of lasting truth. God's unchanging hand, here today, here tomorrow.
Yeah,
That is what people are looking for, and they're looking for community too, and they're
for
not
sure.
finding it online.
No, no, for sure. The
It's
community
it's
aspect is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it should be. That is part of the church.
Hmm.
That is part of the church. The church should know that they are responsible for creating community for all of its members, and they are looking for partners. And this both male and female. And the church should not shy away from that either. Do not dismiss that as well. This is not a dating organization. Well, yes, it kind of is. You should find suitable mates for your young people. That is definitely a duty of the church. It's almost as important as baptism.
Nice, nice. As we go back to your book here, and with everything that we're talking about right now, your book seems to be a very useful tool for especially these young lions to kind of put in their tool belts to use to help them with I don't want to say arguments, you know what I mean, type of thing, because we're not trying to just win arguments, but to communicate with folks who may have doubts, because there are
Sure.
people out there who would love to believe, But because of the world we live in, there's so much pessimism. Nobody trusts anybody else. And, trusting is very difficult if it's new for you. So if you weren't dyed in the wool and raised up, in a particular Christian faith, there's a very good chance this is new. And you're going, all right, you want me to totally believe in this. It seems like your book could really help with that.
I believe so too. It's and we've taken all of these aspects. There's a lot of research that went into this, and I tried to run the research to ground, meaning to bring it as far back to first principles and primary sources as we can, to differentiate some of the ways that these historical events and biblical scriptural passages have been interpreted. And so what I've done is I have the body of the text, and then I have call out boxes in the text, which give you an aside in case you're interested. Here is an important thing about this thing that we just mentioned. And then we have appendices that explain in greater detail for example, the Hebrew calendar. It's not necessary that you know it, but it's very helpful. And if you wish to know it, it's there. It's explained. Many of the events, the key events in this solution, I unpack in the appendices. I'm not dragging everybody's eyeballs through the garden patch of facts and figures. If some things you already accept as true, that, for example, Darius the Mede in Daniel 6 1, for example, he exists, and we show who he is and the historical evidence for him. Now, that might not be interesting. You may already accept that yes, he exists. A lot of academics don't, but we show the evidence for it. And then finally the footnotes. I think we have over 500 footnotes in there, and they are very informative in nailing down and sourcing the claims that are made in the books and in the appendices. So it can be as deep as you want to get. It goes as deep as you want to go. And while sparing the more casual reader, allowing them to read more quickly through. And not only that, but we did something unique. Well, I don't know if it's unique or not. I've not seen anybody else do this. We put a QR code at the top of every chapter. And when you scan the QR code with your phone, it reads it to you. It reads the chapter. So this book reads itself to you. Literally, this book reads itself to you.
That's an incredible feature. That
It's not
helps.
an audio book, yeah,
Right. But
because
it helps.
it
Yeah.
there are still very many visual elements, charts, maps, graphs, and such that you need to have from the book, either the ebook or the print book. But
Mhm.
you can also hear the chapter, and that helps a lot of people.
Sure.
So
Sure. Um, as you as you were writing the book, as you're putting this all together, as you're doing all of this research and you're working towards completing this project, what is it in a perfect world? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish with the book?
that people know that God exists, that scripture is reliable to an extent that even the most hardcore biblical inerrantists might have doubted. There's so much, the Bible is so precise and so true that, and we're showing evidence of this. We're showing the proof, mathematical proof of this, and that Jesus is the Messiah, and and he's all over the Old Testament, actually. The Old Testament speaks of Jesus in many, many places. And well, I'd like to get back to that uh, separately also. But that's so fundamental to someone enter. For example, the 20-year-old kid coming in from college to the nearby church, not knowing what to expect, but just being there and giving it a shot. How is this going to connect with him? He needs to know something, and I know a lot of them are asking the same question. Is this true? Is this true? Yes or no? And here is a clear answer. Yes. Yes, this is true. Please come into the church and accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, both. Not just one or the other, but both.
Yeah. You mentioned just a second ago you wanted to go back to um, the involvement. How Jesus is in the Bible multiple
Oh yeah.
times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that wherever you were going with
Here's
that.
some wonky Bible fact trivia for you.
Go for it.
You know, there are many, many messianic prophecies in the Bible. Some of them are very clearly messianic.
Mhm.
Uh, Others, maybe messianic or not. But of the ones that are clearly messianic, the they, with one exception, they don't use the word Messiah. The Hebrew Mashiach does not appear in them. Micah 5:2, Zechariah 9:9, Numbers 24:17, Isaiah 11:1. They're both Christians and Jews see these as messianic prophecy, but they don't use the word Messiah, Mashiach. It doesn't appear.
Hmm.
The only place, the only messianic prophecy where the word Messiah appears, Mashiach, is in Daniel 9:25 and Daniel 9:26, the two of the verses of the 70 weeks. So that kind of puts it, of course, the Jesus referring to it is is endorsement enough. But here is another thing, and here's another interesting Bible fact, is that in the Old Testament there are several prophets, more than actually have books, but you know the ones. Let's take the ones who have actually books named after them. Four of them, only four of them refer to each other by name. Ezekiel refers to Daniel twice, actually. Daniel refers to Jeremiah at the beginning of Daniel 9, in fact. Daniel and Jeremiah refers to Micah. All of these four prophets are key in establishing the chronological framework foretold in Daniel 9:25. It's it's another little Easter egg, I think, that God left for us to show, yes, this is the right path. This is what I intend. And I don't claim finality. Somebody might find more. There's nothing to say that they can't. But here is something that we found that is true, that, Daniel's giving us numbers, not words, not words that we can twist into other meanings. These are numbers. Seven, it's seven. It's exactly this many. 62 is never 61 or 63. I'm in Daniel 9:25. It's so numbers are what we work with, and we use the numbers to find a mathematical solution because that's what God gave us, and we do, and we can verify it. And another interesting thing is that, unlike, I've never seen anybody else do this either. There is some math in this book, but by math, I don't mean higher math. I mean arithmetic, essentially, what you could do on a cheap calculator. It's, uh, it's, I had it audited by a mathematics professor at a U.S. university, and his audit letter stating that all the mathematical statements in this book are correct is in the appendix, or in one of the appendices.
Nice. So there's a lot of proof for the proof that you're
There's
providing.
proof for the proof and backup for the proof. It's astounding at how robustly this comes together. And
Nice.
we even calculated the odds that it could be just fluke, like coincidence. And those odds calculate they're slimmer than winning the Powerball jackpot four times in a row on single tickets. So
That's
it's
slim.
Yeah, it would be easier to find a single grain of sand on planet Earth without knowing where it is.
Goodness.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. Absolutely love it. How long did this take you to do? I mean, there's a ton of research that went into this.
I had the first epiphany in 2013, 2014. I had heard of this and I started working on it fairly soon after. But then I started seeing things that others had not. And that started, so I'm just saying about 10 years. I'm
Goodness.
saying it about 10 years. And I
Okay.
started writing the book in 2015.
Interesting.
Yeah.
As you were doing your research, and you just brought this up, as you start to see things that you haven't heard of before, that maybe other people have not noticed, that aren't being put out there, is that a rabbit hole you just can't resist going down then to like
Y-
pursue that even more?
Yes, but there are two sides to that coin. Number one, of course, yes, it's enticing and
Right.
exciting. Number two, it you have to keep your wits about you. You can't get drunk on your own ideas. You
Yeah.
have to remain objective when you're looking at this and realizing that, this, yes, this is exciting, but we've got a big job to do.
Yeah.
And in the end, um, I'm sure that you will see from reading the book that you will see that that's been done.
Yeah. I would imagine that those rabbit holes are also a pretty nice little piece of spiritual warfare to keep you from finishing and keeping your eye on the prize.
There's that too. There's that too. There were a lot of mistakes that I made, a lot of distractions, a lot of things that happened, but I never stopped working. I never stopped pushing the rock.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
For
and
sure.
yeah. And now
Did
I'm
you,
doing that on the second book.
oh, look at that. All right, he throws in the teaser. Okay, so the second book then, I mean, we're coming towards the end, so I love it. What is the second book shaping up to look like? And do we have
It,
to wait another 10 years for it?
no, no,
All
no. I hope to have it out next year
right.
sometime. It is we find a ultra accurate description of Jesus of Nazareth in the Old Testament. We also find a very clear and succinct presentation of the Christian gospel in the same place. And I'm speaking of the passage that starts in Isaiah 52 and goes through to the end of Isaiah 53. So Isaiah 52:13 until the end of Isaiah 53. It is it is a hand in glove description that fits only Jesus. And we have recovered that text on the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the Great Isaiah Scroll. It's carbon dated to 125 BC. So the text itself, the description of Jesus, predates Jesus, and this we know for sure. It's not controversial. The date of this text is not controversial at all.
Hmm,
This too is an example of God foretelling the future and it coming to pass so that we know that he is God.
interesting. Give myself and our listeners those passages one more time that you're centering on. It's Isaiah what now?
The text is very often referred to as simply Isaiah 53 or Isaiah's fourth servant song. And it starts in Isaiah 52, verse 13, and it ends in Isaiah 53:12, which is also the end of the chapter, Isaiah 53.
Interesting.
There were no chapters and verses back then, not until the Middle Ages.
I
Those
did
are
not know that.
artificial. They're artificially created by a guy named Stephen Langton, former Archbishop of Canterbury, who was alive at the time of the Magna Carta,
Interesting.
and he had something to do with Magna Carta. I'm not sure, but anyway, yeah, it was about back then. Prior to that, you would not have chapter numbers. You remember when Jesus on the cross said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Sure.
He didn't say Psalm 22. He gave the first line. There were no numbers to the Psalms back then. So he cried out the first line of that psalm, and everybody knew which psalm he's referring to.
Interesting.
They just didn't have the numbers.
All right. Well, I finally found 5213. It took me a minute, but I got there. So I
Behold my servant.
my behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high. I love that. I wanted to be able to look it up, as you were talking about it. So you were doing the same thing on this verse, on this idea that you did with the Daniel 9:25.
Yes, yes.
Beautiful.
And it's going to be, well, in this one, we don't have numbers to work with. So we're not dealing with a mathematical component, but we do have text. And there is so much in that text to unpack that by the end, again, it's something that you just can't unsee. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
Love it.
And surprisingly, so much of the church is unaware of this passage. Many denominations don't even open up the Old Testament. They rarely refer to it
Hmm.
when, in fact, the Old Testament still is very valid and very, very important. It is the Word of God, just
Right.
as the New Testament is.
Nice. Nice. Well, I certainly hope when you get the second book out, you'll come back on the show.
Great. I'd love to. I'd
I
love to,
would
Roy.
love to have you on here to talk about this again. This it's truly fascinating. Whenever we have these types of things that come right out of this book that we've all read, I don't even know how many times, but there's things that you just don't stop and focus on
Isn't
until
it?
you hear something like this.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? You know,
Yeah.
you can go to a book club that meets every month for your whole life. And any other book written by man, even big ones like War and Peace or Shakespeare's Folio, or you could get to the end of it in your book club. You can come to a point where okay, we've gone over all of it. You will never get to an end point for the Bible. It stands apart in that. And
Sure.
and you can once you finish the last verse of Revelation, you can start right over again in the first verse of Genesis, and still glean a completely different set of enlightenment from reading that word, because it's the word of God. It comes from a mind far superior to our own.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely. I love it. I absolutely love it. James, how can people contact you, find your book? Where do they look?
We're on Amazon. Let me pull it up here. Can you see this okay?
There it is. Three Proofs of God.
That's the
Absolutely.
cover. Three Proofs of God. We have it in hardback, paperback, Kindle, the ebook.
Yep.
Don't think that the expensive one is going to help me any more than the cheap one. I get the same for any copy that sells. I get about the same amount,
Okay.
and it's not much. But anyway, I really hope that if you are seeking hard evidence or would be appreciative of hard evidence, that you pick this book up and give it a try. And not only that, but you can go on the website at threeproofsofgod.com. And that's both number threeproofsofgod.com and threeproofsofgod.com spelled out. You can read the first 4 chapters of this book for free. And you can hear the audio. The QR codes work. They will work for you. You can hear the book read itself to you, so that you can see whether this is vibing with the type of book that you can connect with. So,
There you go. It's important to be vibing right with your stuff. I
right,
love
right.
it. All right. James, let me ask you this. One last thing here. Any parting thoughts for our listeners who, may be looking for proof, who may be a little resistant to proof? Any parting thought
Yes,
you feel called to put out to these folks that are listening to you today?
yes, emphatically. the culture tells us that we can neither prove nor disprove God, and that's false. The culture will say that a supernatural entity cannot be detected in this physical universe. That's false. If the supernatural entity does work in in this universe, then yes, there is a way to prove it, at least in theory. Is there a way to prove him in or disprove in reality? Well, yes, there is. And God tells us how. He can foretell the future. He can observe the future and declare it to us. We cannot do this. There is no way, not even in quantum mechanics, is there a theory that allows us to reverse the arrow of time. We can up and slow down time using gravity and velocity and such things, but we can't observe the future and then send that descriptive information back to our present. That is reversing the arrow of time, and that breaks the second law of thermodynamics. Now, don't worry, I don't get heavy into physics in this book. I mean, I do mention it a bit, but it's in the footnotes. You don't have to follow that to understand, because most people do understand. We would love to know where NVIDIA stock is going to be in 1 month, or who is going to win the Super Bowl, or who is this girl going to marry me or not, or am I going to get over my illness or not? We would love to know that, and we would do anything to if we could. We would figure out a way to do it, but we can't, and we can't, because if we could, there would be no insurance industry. Vegas wouldn't operate the way it does. These are things that humans cannot do. God can do it. God claims to do it, and God demonstrates that he can do it.
Nice.
So yes, get over your own expectation that that proving God is impossible. Set that aside. Be open to the possibility that this could be true, and then take a look at the evidence and weigh it as you see fit.
I'm very glad I asked you that question. You were ready
Me
for
too.
that one, brother. Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Author of Three Proofs of God, centered on Daniel 9:25, James Brown. James, thank you so much for sharing all of this incredible and fascinating information about this book that we all read every day and still miss things. And it's been enlightening, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on and sharing all that with everybody.
Thank you, Rory, and thank you to your listeners for your time.
You got it. You got it. Folks, it is time. It's time to wake up the lions. And more than that, it's time for you to take your rightful place with your brothers and your sisters and let them hear you roar. The world is ready. You're ready. You just have to believe it.